Hi, I'm Deborah Boschert. Thank you so much for joining us for our SAQA mentorship webinar with a bunch of awesome lightning talks from the Philadelphia conference that recently happened. We are using a brand new platform. It's called Zoom. And so I am just give me just 1 second to see the lay of the land here. I see that we have viewers. I'm looking at my toolbar and I see that there are viewers, which is great. I'm now feeling more confident that I'm not just talking to no one. So thank you all for being here. And I want to let you know all of the viewers, you are all muted. And so no one is going to see you or hear from you. That's all controlled in the back end there. So, thanks again. Like I said, I'm Deborah Boschert. I'm chair of the Education Committee, and I'm just thrilled that you all are here. I want to tell you just a little bit about the technology behind this platform. It's the first time we're using Zoom, like I mentioned, so I hope that you will bear with us if we encounter any technical difficulties. We've really tried to do everything possible to ensure that we have great connectivity. But if the audio or the video freezes or cuts out, just give it a minute and we think that it will just come right back online. Like I said, all of the attendees are muted, so no one can see or hear you. Now we are going to have a short question and answer session at the end of all the lightning talks. And all of you viewers can enter questions into the question and answer tab on your Zoom toolbar. So you should be able to scroll down and see a Q&A tab there. Feel free to enter those questions as they come to you. And at the end of all the lightning talk presentations, we will throw those out to some of our panelists. We might not have time to get to all of them, but we will certainly do our best. So have at it with great questions. I also want you to know that one of the things that we love about this Zoom platform is that you can see the webcams of whoever is talking, which is why you're seeing me, which is super fun. Right now, you're just seeing me, and then once we begin broadcasting the slides for the lightning talks, you will see those digital slides. They'll fill up the main part of your Zoom window, and then there'll be a little tiny thumbnail of the presenter. So you'll get to see each of the presenters also. Now you do have an option to make that image of their webcam different sizes. So scroll over that image when it pops up and you can change the size if you wish. We'll be recording this webinar and it will be available on the SAQA website later this week. And I think that's it for most of the technical stuff. So I am going to take a little pause, and then I'm going to begin recording, and then I'll give a more formal introduction, and we will get into the lightning talks. Hi, I'm Deborah Boschert, chair of the Education Committee and coordinator of SAQA mentorship webinars. Thank you so much for tuning in today to hear 7 awesome lightning talks from our 2016 SAQA Conference in Philadelphia. We are thrilled to be able to offer this presentation as a webinar to all our members. Remember that webinars are a wonderful benefit of being a SAQA member, and our webinar archives are full of topics, many, many topics, so you should check those out and remember that that's a benefit exclusively available to members. I really want to thank Maria Schell, who coordinated these talks at the conference. And Maria is going to give us a brief introduction about the lightning talk format, because I bet some of you still don't know exactly what that is. I also want to introduce and thank our 7 awesome panelists. They worked super hard to put together inspiring, informative, and talks full of beautiful images, thoughtful words, and well-practiced deliveries. So thank them for their time and generosity in sharing their talks with the SAQA membership. We are going to be including lightning talks from Cindy Friedman from Pennsylvania, Diane Melms from Alaska, Carole Staples from Ohio, Jill Kerttula from Virginia, Geri Patterson-Kutras from California, Jan Tetzlaff from Oregon, and Amy Meissner from Alaska. So can I just say, how amazing is technology? We're all here from all over the country and potentially all over the world, sharing ideas and inspiration together. Okay, I'm gonna hand it over to Maria. She's gonna give you a brief intro of lightning talks, and then we will get ready for the talks. Oh, it looks like Maria has lost her connectivity. I don't see her as a panelist here. Let me just scroll through and see. No, she's disappeared. So my apologies. Let me tell you a little bit about what Maria was going to share with you. So lightning talks are a format for public speaking where the presenter prepares 20 images in a digital slideshow, and those 20 images are automatically advanced every 20 seconds. So it's 6.5+ minutes for each talk, and it's a challenge for the speaker to keep up with the slides. At the conference, we had 24 lightning talks, and we were in a small conference room, and we were in 3 groups of talks, and the room was full of such energy and enthusiasm that many, many attendees of the conference ended up staying right there in that room for the entire 3 hours and listening to every single one of those lightning talks. I see Maria has popped back in. So Maria, I gave a little introduction on your behalf. Do you want to say just a few words, and then we'll get to the talks? Go ahead.
All right. Hi, SAQA. I'm just going to tell you what I prepared, and that is the way that I became involved with this project is that I was a featured artist for the Alaska State Council on the Arts Conference in 2014. So I knew, and one of the things I did as a featured artist is I gave a PK lightning style talk, which was 6 minutes, 40 seconds long and featured 20 slides. Then I heard, 2 years later, that the Special Events Committee for SAQA was going to organize a similar program, and I volunteered to be in charge. So for several months, I worked with 24 SAQA members to organize 24 short presentations, and the presentations ranged from shipping your artwork around the world to the inner bowels of an artist's studio. So the day came when we were scheduled to give 3 hours worth of presentations, and the room filled. It was standing room only. And we were really just riveted by our own ability to entertain ourselves. And there's so many good things that came out of it. One of them is that we know that SAQA has amazing artists, but we also now know that they're really spectacular presenters as well. And it gave us a great opportunity to dialogue with each other, not just as SAQA members, but as artists and people. And I'm so pleased to have had the opportunity to work with the Special Events Committee and now with the Education Committee to share 7 of these talks with the larger SAQA membership. So enjoy.
Hi, I'm Cindy Friedman. I live in Marion Station, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia. And my work has been focused on shadows, human beings, the shadows they create, the environments they live in. And I'm going to tell you today about my last 8 years. This photograph appeared in the New York Times in 2007. A printed pre-internet version. And I have always been fascinated by human bodies and their shapes. I love the people, the shadow shapes, and the sidewalk block perspective. I cut it out as a tool used to play with outside the box thinking. The shadows describe the bodies, how they are dressed, and what they carry. I copied the image onto overhead transparency film to create a reflection that could be a quilt block inspiration. This is my first iteration of using this idea as a block pattern. I love the interplay of a graphic pattern that is difficult to visually decode. Understanding shadows and shapes is buried in the amygdala. It is part of the brain in the system that controls fight or flight instincts. Shadows help us understand mass, size, shape, danger, friend, or foe, and it's a process we deal with unconsciously and at light speed. All of my deep interests intersected in this place of humans and shadows and landscape details. I see the power of separate units that want to be close associates. I then went on a hunt for images of humans and shadows and landscapes. I like the idea of building a block pattern that repeats in some format. I took 3 of these images and turned them into drawings and made my next 3 shadowscape quilts. This is my Quilt National 2011 application and my first time being chosen for QN. Hilary Fletcher was an early and very special mentor to the volunteer team behind Art Quilt Elements. She advised us, encouraged us, and supported us as we molded our East Coast venue after Quilt National. I did a self-portrait inspired by an exhibit at the Philadelphia PAFA in October 20th, titled Narcissus in the Studio, Artists and Self-Portraits. Carolyn Veslich took this portrait of me in front of my FOF 1222E, a definition of me, the artist. On the Chicago lakefront is a permanent sculpture installation called the Agora Giants. Once again, my shadows, people, and grids interact and inspire me as I see them reflecting and mirrored blocks. My quilt, A Man Among Giants. Also in Chicago, my husband in front of the sculpture Cloud Gate in the Millennium Park. It's a giant polished bean that sits in a concrete grid. I was fascinated by the image distortion in the reflections on this curved and highly polished surface. This is the shadow of my daughter as she and her friend hiked a small mountain near Gaborone, Botswana, where I spend about 9 weeks a year. It is in sub-Saharan Africa and the light is very intense, often producing very extreme colors and dark blue-black shadows. A staged photo taken by my son and his friend at La Recoleta in Buenos Aires, Brazil. My work always begins with a photo that I print and then I do an ink drawing on an 8.5 by 11-inch sheet of clear print vellum. I use the drawing to enlarge and print templates. This is my drawing. I scan it and play with it in Photoshop to see how the drawn image will reflect and mirror and tile. This process helps me see if this is a shadow concept that will work in fabric. The architecture, diagonal lines, and multiple shadows worked. This is the first completed and complex panel, 20 by 22 inches. I then photograph that panel and again go into Photoshop to see the finished piece. I then attempt to produce the additional panels to offer the illusion of symmetry and reflection. This is the completed Valley of the Shadows, 4 separate stretched panels, which can rotate and be hung in a variety of ways. It's a clear example of a quilt block, slightly more difficult, complex to construct than your average Ohio star. I was invited to produce a piece for a contemporary exhibit called Flight Patterns, installed in the Atlanta airport. I used a Reuters commercial image with permission to generate the drawing of people in airport transit. As a frequent flyer to Africa, I spend lots of time in airports observing people. This is a complete palette change for me after discovering the idea of using ombre silk charmeuse for sky. I loved playing with the neutral gray tones and values, and I recycled the airport drawing to produce Global Reflections, currently touring in Quilt National 2015. Missed connections happened by coincidence. A lime green and a gray layer both failed their auditions. Months later, I decided to give them companions. It is an ombre silk charmeuse whole cloth quilt with figure overlays, which are fused and stitched in place in layers. Botswana Blues is an older piece inspired by the dignified presence of our driver in a village setting and a nearby terrace defined by a textured concrete and block wall. I explored the transparent nature of shadows alongside the transparency of color. This is another 2014 piece, Urban Reflections. The photo that inspired this also came from a small black and white newspaper image. I loved the detailing of the tree base and the red chair, but was less than happy with the final scale of this piece. Maria, I'm not seeing my piece number 20. This is the piece that's currently on my wall. My friend Libby was on a camel ride in Morocco recently, and her photo has inspired my current project. And who knows where the shadows will take me. They lurk everywhere, in lighted spaces and in dark corners. I love the shadows and exploring them.
Diane, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Hi, I'm Diane Melms. I'm just going to go on now. I'm Diane Melms from Anchorage, Alaska, and I'm here today to advocate for teaching fiber art to kids. I've held art classes for kids in my home studio for many years, and I would like to share some projects we have done and encourage you to think about what you might do with your kids, your grandkids, or other young people in your life. In my classes, the focus was on making art. They were not designed as sewing classes. So I kept it simple, and we learned just enough to be able to use the sewing machine as a tool for making art with fabric. Doing fabric projects with kids requires careful planning. But if you keep it fun and creative, the kids will love it, and you'll be amazed at what they can do. I usually have beginners start by making a simple fused collage. This kind of project is great for introducing basic design concepts, working with color schemes, and arranging shapes. Sometimes designing a project around a theme can give the students a focus. In this class, all the kids made a forest scene, but their artwork expressed a wide range of ideas of what they imagined a forest scene could be. Working within limits can actually encourage creativity. I've worked with kids from second grade on up, both boys and girls. They always have lots of ideas and don't have any problem creating original designs for projects. We don't use patterns from other sources and keep the focus on creativity and accomplishment, not perfection. Students also enjoy doing simple strip piecing to make little patchwork designs. These lessons emphasize making good fabric choices, learning to sew seams, and ways to restructure their strip sets to make their designs more interesting. Some students return year after year, and we were able to build on skills and do more complex projects. These girls made their own piece designs for their little quilted purses, and I guided them through the process of putting them together. Their smiling faces show us how proud they were of what they had accomplished. I was always looking for new ideas that would motivate the kids, and this project was especially fun. Here the younger kids made pillows with silly faces. It was always a hit when they could make something they could use. One of my friends volunteered to help with this big project. If you want a project that will get rave reviews from kids though, do something three-dimensional. Sculpture projects were always popular, whether it was making pillows, puppets, butterflies, or snakes. Kids love working 3D, and anything with a face is more fun to make. At the end of our class sessions, we always had an art show and invited the parents. We usually had our shows in my studio, but we also had exhibitions in coffee shops, bakeries, art galleries, and even at the local art museum. The kids loved taking their families to see their work on display in the community. I also like to introduce students to the art of other cultures, so they can begin to see how art is an important part of our cultural identity. In this African art class, we looked at traditional printed textiles, and then the students used stamps and dye to make their own designs on cloth. With younger students, we talked about African clothing style and the symbols used in traditional printed fabrics. The kids made little papier-mâché figures, then designed the colorful cloth wraps they used to dress them. In our class on Latin American art, the students were inspired by the molas from Panama. The kids used felt for their mola designs and stitched them all by hand. These classes were usually really quiet, and I think doing this kind of slow handwork can help kids learn to focus and concentrate. The last time I taught a fiber art class, the kids dyed all the cloth for the projects they made. They mixed colors, painted with dye, and used resist techniques to make their fabrics more interesting. They also added surface designs with stamping and monoprinting. Then they used their beautiful hand-dyed and printed fabrics to make several different projects. The younger kids did a fused collage, and here they're doing some machine quilting. They finished their designs with a colorful strip piece border. In an effort to ramp up the fun factor, we also did a 3D project with their fancy fabrics. Here the students designed and made little butterfly sculptures. They even added their own faces to the bodies. This was so much fun. I've done it several times with other groups of friends. The older students enjoyed adding more details to their painted designs with stamped patterns, hand stitching, and other embellishments. They were always eager to try new ideas. As the kids developed more skills and confidence, I began to introduce more challenging projects. I did this last project with a group of girls who had been in my classes for many years. They created their own pieced animal designs, following a complex process which included dyeing the fabric, adding printed surface designs, and making their own patterns for piecing. It was truly amazing. Well, I'm slipping in this picture here because I'm concerned that our kids are spending way too much time doing this today. I worry that they're being enticed by the novelty of technology and are missing out on the benefits of learning to create with their hands. The tradition of passing handwork skills from one generation to the next has almost been lost. And I think we as artists have a unique opportunity to pay it forward. Let's help our kids discover the magic of making art. Let's share our skills and passion for creating with fabric and pass it on to the next generation.
I'm super excited to be here. Technology. My name is Amy Meissner. I'm an artist in Anchorage, Alaska. My work explores fear and loss, motherhood, womanhood, and the fleeting quality of memory. While I don't always work in the quilt form, I do hold intention to work within the boundaries of abandoned cloth. I come from Scandinavian women I am the 12th firstborn daughter to a firstborn daughter, a line extending to 1642. My son severed this lineage. If born a girl, that daughter would have been the 13th. I don't know what kind of inheritance that would have been, but I know mine. Part of my relationship to cloth comes from a heritage steeped in making, of bent necks, rough hands, and stabbing needles. Swedish women have sent me linens my entire life. I filled a trunk with doilies, tea towels, and potholders, unwanted by me for the most part. But when I had children, I sensed a shift. My living questions encompassed thoughts like, how do I escort my daughter into womanhood with grace and joy and strength? How have my own experiences shaped me as a mother? How do I gather the tools I still need to get it right? To have a relationship with one's materials is to be open to the narrative power of voice, not just your own echo, but in my case, open to the ghosts of prior generations who still have something to say. Whether or not you want to hear it, whether or not you think it pertains to you, whether or not it is contemporary or even beautiful. Because an artist's job isn't to make people feel good, it's to make people think. Materials are persistent, demanding you question their use if you are to find the heart of a piece. Have you questioned your materials lately? Can you say what you need to in another medium? Why use cloth when paint or wood or paper may be the better entryway? I ask myself this all the time. In Mary Karr's book, The Art of Memoir, she writes, "One can't mount a stripper pole wearing a metal diving suit." That visual is worth remembering, so I'll repeat it. One can't mount a stripper pole wearing a metal diving suit. So what does she mean? Don't wear armor for a job that requires one to be naked, raw, and vulnerable in order to seduce an audience. Also, you're going to need all your muscle strength to hang upside down from a pole, so get rid of all the extra shit you're hauling around or figure out how it can support you. For me, this meant embracing a heritage I often found confusing and foreign in ways beyond language and custom. I spent a lifetime shoving linens in a trunk, so turning to them with joy hasn't been easy or even visually interesting at times. In my defense, the 12-year-old me didn't want a table runner for her birthday or embroidered tea towels for Christmas again. I associated these items with disappointment, with a family's unwillingness or even failure to really know me. Plus, some things were just really, really ugly. But these were the outpourings of distant Nordic women on the other side of the world, whose warmth toward me I questioned the few times we'd met. I didn't understand that their love was held in the physical act of making, that this was a vital way to nurture. Perhaps they thought filling my trunk would prepare me, but for what? Early mornings at a stove? Late nights hand washing, starching, ironing, and mending? I'd been taught to navigate the domestic realm, but I didn't want to. I still don't want to. Ironically, this is exactly what I'm doing. Laundering these items late at night, slithering around my stripper pole, confronting questions of mortality and fear and disappointment and loss, circling and circling until I find the entryway, until I find the voice. Another irony is that I'm being sent more domestic linens now than ever before. Through my recent crowdsourcing effort called the Inheritance Project, I've received packages from all over the world: England, Canada, Sweden, Australia, the US, and now France. People are considering the history of cloth, judging its weight, then letting it go. and I am accepting and shaping it. I'm holding the time, the material, the work it took someone to create something from nothing. For every maker I can name, there are 20 or 30 items that come labeled unknown. Inheritance. It's a weighty thing. It's forced me into a correspondence and documentation effort that far surpasses the time I have available. But this is an integral part of the work I'm compelled to do right now. The handwork of the past and lingering hum of history simply becomes another material. And I know it's the right material because I continue to ask myself, if so, and also because of its persistent nature. Raw material continues to arrive at my door, along with stories from strangers about strangers. And I keep circling, looking for the entryway, considering the living questions. I'd always thought it was funny to force a man in from the field and starving to wade through a sea of doilies to get to his hot dinner. But here's that last irony. At 6 o'clock, I hear the side door open, the scrape of shoes, and my husband say, "Ugh, what's all this laundry stuff hanging everywhere? Wait, is that lingerie?" To breathe new life into the discarded is to hold a deep relationship with materials, even if it means confronting vulnerability, questioning beauty, and becoming a vessel for the work and time of others. Even if it means defending your past, defending memory, defending doilies.
Hi there, I'm Geri Patterson-Kutras, and I'm a Northern California SAQA. I want to thank Maria Schell for her guidance and encouragement as a teacher and now a friend.
Hey Geri, it's Deborah. Sometimes it's hard to tell if why it's not advancing. So give me 1 second.
This seems to be my...
Hold on 1 second. All right, let's try again. All right, I think we'll probably this will be up for a moment, and then we'll hope that it will proceed. All right, hold on again.
This is my fate.
So just a little background for those of you who might not know, at the Philadelphia Conference, we had an issue with Geri's images. So like Geri said, apparently it's just not meant to be. But we're gonna try one more time. I'm gonna go to your first slide, which is the childhood portrait. And I'm going to share my screen again.
Sounds great.
And it should advance after 20 seconds. Fingers crossed.
This is my story. However, I suspect there are aspects of it that are shared by many of you, because not all artists are born to be Picasso, drawing like a master by age 5, setting the art world on its ear. Some artists are born to take a longer path, a journey of discovery, a journey of some length. Our course may take sharp turns, and we may experience stumbling blocks and skin knees along the way. We grow up knowing that we prefer running free, loving the colors of the sky and the trees in the fall. We don't always fit the mold. Sitting in a classroom with pencil and paper encourages us to doodle rather than the math and spelling that's required. Our journey is filled with experiences that inform the artist we are to become. We know deep down that there is a fire that yearns to burn brightly. It must be tended and never, never neglected. As we grow, some of us follow the path of working and raising a family, creating with Play-Doh, sewing Barbie doll clothes, paintings mounted on the refrigerator with magnets, and children's favorite crayons eaten by the dog fill our world with color and exuberance. When we're young and raising a family, our activities are often restricted by the reality of finances. What we make should serve a purpose. We discover quilting. It keeps our families warm, yet the call of the cloth, the play of the patterns, and the ability to sew all day while the kids are at school is mind-boggling. Gradually, word gets out that you love to quilt and do art with children. There's a call for volunteers at the children's school, and you step forward. Your first audience of artists. You take a bold step into the classroom to share your love of art and quilting. You find that there are young souls that share your passion for color and line. You learn that they too need a guide to say, it's okay. Stay true to what you love and enjoy the journey you're beginning. The lessons you've learned on your journey are rich, and you begin to understand why you are on this path. You're not just a traveler anymore. You've become a guide, making the experiences not only rewarding for yourself, but for those you teach as well. If you never give up listening to that inner artist's voice and acting upon it, new branches in your road, new opportunities, new guides, and dear friends will be revealed. At 55 years old, you go back to college to study art. The floodgates are opened, the ember grows stronger. The rough texture of the charcoal on paper, the paint and dyes that stain your hands and clothes are a newfound source of joy and exploration. You travel to France and you drink in the colors and inspirations of the museums and paintings of the artists that have gone before you. They too heard the inner passionate voice of expression. Like a siren's song, they say, keep going, you're on the right journey. The artist that has always been in you leaps forward, and the ember becomes a flame. You recall the little book you read to your children that said, I think I can, I think I can, I know I can. The child that always hated school becomes the artist who graduates summa cum laude. At graduation, you are sure that you hear your mother's voice in her wonderful Brooklyn accent saying, who knew? What seems like a long and diverse journey now has become new beginnings, new possibilities. Like Peter Pan, you can fly. I've found my voice, enriched by the journey I've taken so far, and eager for more. Perhaps like Grandma Moses, some artists are meant to journey. Our wings must mature and grow strong, nurtured by experience before we can soar. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." Wherever our journeys take us in this life, let us always have the courage to meet the challenge and never stop being inspired by life, our fellow travelers, and the adventures and trials of the journey. May we always find time to listen to that inner voice of creativity and then act upon it and express what it has to share. We may still stumble and fall, but we now have the fortitude and confidence to get back up and continue to move forward on our path. Because each of us has an artist within. It longs to take its journey, it longs for the creative process, and it embraces the palette of rich colors and their potential on the canvas before us.
Hi, my name is Carole Staples. I live in Westchester, Ohio, suburb of Cincinnati, and I'm one of the Ohio State vets. Thanks for joining the talk this evening. That is my partner in this journey of healing that I'm getting ready to talk about. We've done a lot of miles together. My journey in art quilting was born from a healing experience when I made a quilt to help me heal from sadness, depression, loneliness, and anxiety. So Village Sisters is the first quilt I made after moving from upstate New York to Ohio. My journey in putting it all behind me was a quilt I made during extreme illness and recovery. In my lucid periods, I would work on it to take my mind off the symptoms I was experiencing. The figures have their backs to us because they're putting the dark times behind us and looking into the bright future. The Mask of Dark is another quilt that helped me to heal from feelings of inadequacy, self-doubt, and negative thinking. This mask is a physical manifestation of the negative voice in my head that I was being tormented by. The creation for this mask helped me acknowledge its presence and exercise the negative energy from within me. Almost all of my quilt ideas are divine gifts. They're just planted in my thoughts. In June of 2015, the idea of making prayer cloths just popped into my head. So I started to research the Tibetan prayer cloths that I'd heard of often. Next, I searched Pinterest for interests for images of prayer cloths for inspiration and instructions on how to make them. There was a plethora of images and tutorials. I was drawn most to the Quilting Arts Prayer Flag project. I studied the images and the messages that were created by artists everywhere. Reviewed the guidelines, instructions to get started. Once I had some kind of making parameters, I quickly began to caroline the prayer cloths I was making. Peace and Blessings was my first prayer cloth quilt. I allowed the universe to deliver the subject and composition, and then I charged it with my intentions and positive energy. Abundance is the second prayer cloth quilt. This time the universe delivered the subject, compositions, and a prayer, which I put on the back of all my prayer cloth quilts. trio was delivered as a series of 3 prayer cloth quilts addressing the need of letting go of negative energy and seeking peace within oneself. And it was made from scratch that I picked up in the class that I was teaching. The concept of letting go started to occupy my thoughts next. I just want to read the slide. Forgiveness doesn't excuse what they did. It frees you from the pain that bounds you to them. So this is my mantra going forward. I want to be free of those binding negative thoughts. Holding a grudge doesn't make you strong, it makes you bitter. Forgiving doesn't make you weak, it sets you free. So that slide just goes along still with my mantra of you have to let go and of the negativity and just walk in the positive light. In June of 2015, while working in my studio, forgiveness was placed in my thoughts and on my heart. So I decided to create forgiveness blocks for people that I had ill will towards, to free and release myself from pain and negativity. I created a process for creating forgiveness blocks. The main thing is embedding the person's name and the transgression within the layers of the block, merging it into the structure of the foot block. This particular block was created to forgive a once close friend that I had been estranged from for 8 years. Once the block was created, I felt an instant peace come over me. After completing and creating each forgiveness block, a prayer shows up that benefits me and the person I'm forgiving. Then I print it out and adhere to the back of the forgiveness block. And I print it on each of them. This forgiveness block was created to forgive a male member of my family. You can see how intuitively the composition lends itself to a male. The universe always delivers. This quote block, forgiveness block, this one I made for myself, to heal and forgive myself for bad decisions made in the past and for not loving myself. I was able to heal and forgive myself for not loving myself because I wasn't enough, because I was overweight, I had a round face, I had big arms. Now I've embraced my authentic self, and I've come to realize, despite those perceived flaws, I am enough. Now I walk in my own truth, and I love who I am. Through healing, forgiving, and letting go, today I am healthier, happier, more energetic, and have a more positive outlook on life. That's why I'm in this photo, chilling on the beach, relaxing, and soaking up the sun, enjoying life.
Hi, I'm Jan Tetzlaff from Bend, Oregon. Line is the basic element of design, and I'll take you with me as I look for line in my backyard and in the world. A line is a dot that went for a walk, Paul Klee famously said, building on Wassily Kandinsky's statement that everything starts from a dot. I walk most days looking for Klee's connected dots. I move quickly for exercise, but pause to take photographs as part of my artistic practice. And over the days, weeks, and months, my photos have become a study of line. Ancient peoples have long known the power of line. Line's a continuous mark applied to a surface, a crease in the skin, like a wrinkle, a contour or outline, a border or boundary, according to the Free Dictionary. Line acts as symbolic language or communicates forms, even when lines are limited. Most of my walks are in my neighborhood, which has the challenge of looking with fresh eyes on familiar territory. The seasons change, and so do the lines I see and capture with my camera. Shadows shift, birds take flight, fences appear while others topple. Familiarity forces me to pay attention, to discover new lines. Teach yourself how to see. Why do I like that? Look at the details, Gwen Marston tells us. Line, that most basic art and design element, is the foundation other elements are built on. Nancy Crow says line is the skeleton of your work. The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes, Marcel Proust said. Tire tracks in mud can be prosaic or a springboard for creativity. Are the tracks merely an imprint or a visual manifestation of energy? Continuity keeps us engaged, Elizabeth Barton says. Subtle elements of line, motion, style, texture, weight, change the way we look at objects. Curved lines are graceful and fluid. Diagonal lines are unstable. Vertical lines suggest power and authority. Horizontal lines convey peace and tranquility. Line communicates, gestures, creates contours. Not all my walks are in my neighborhood. In Japan, the tension between nature and urban intrigues. Psychological weight is created when lines meet and change direction. Lines may be assertive, active, aggressive, or passive, poetic, and pale. Line moves our eyes in visual and verbal ways through emphasis and implication. Line's a rich metaphor for the artist. It denotes not only boundary or contour, it is literally movement and change. Life itself, says art critic Lance Esplund. Line takes on meaning when you know its context. A piece of barbed wire is just wire until you know it enclosed Robben Island, where Nelson was imprisoned for 18 years. Line communicates symbolically. It blurs reality while conveying, sharing, revealing emotion through its character and direction. What did the lines of these bars say? Straight lines go too quickly to appreciate the pleasures of the journey. Broken lines do not know what they want. They cut time up, abuse routes, writes Renee Crevel. There may be a story in a line. The clean lines of upright poles, the starkness of the curved lines of the bike. How would I interweave that story in lines of my own? Lines create an experience beyond the literal. Lines, like music, create the potential for mystery, artist Linda Saccaccio says. Looking for line becomes catching. On a Cape Town city street, my husband, who would never describe himself as an artist, urged me to come quickly and take photographs of this staircase in shadow. It has great lines, he said. In nature, line can exist as a structure, such as branches, or as a surface design, as in zebras. While line is the most basic unit of visual communication, conveying time, context, and place, it's also important to explore the non-rational lines found in nature. A curved line is the loveliest distance between 2 points, according to one anonymous source. But the jagged lines surrounding these water lilies communicate tension and turbulence. The soft, shallow curves denoting safety and familiarity are in motion with the addition of small diagonal lines. Line is a mark made by a moving point. It can be beautiful and harmonious, but it can also convey stress or anger. Jackie Gehring celebrates the potential of line. Line, it's absolutely essential in creating art. In fabric art, we use lines not only for inspiration, but when we piece, stitch, cut, and quilt our work. Consider each mark you make as a line, not only to hold the work together, but to add visual element, advises Jean Wells Keenan. In my quilt, Mackenzie's Beach,
I used the stitch line to convey motion and add texture. There's a lot of stitching in that quilt. The hand stitch line is an essential part of my art. Adding handwork helps us rediscover why we love the fabric. The process, Rosalie Dace reminds us. My building block, my essential line, is made by hand with needle and thread. The stitch line underpins, makes lines I see in my photographs. I don't find it necessary to replicate the original source. The stitch line communicates its own vocabulary of marks, as artist and writer Cass Holmes says. Artists create their work in a way that is meaningful to them. Clay's Garden is my interpretation of a Paul Klee watercolor. My slow, contemplative stitches make this piece a personal narrative, an exploration of line that supports a design that evolved by human hand. Nowhere do line and stitch and art become more connected than in the Japanese needlework used to create boro. Out of poverty and necessity, rags are stitched together, layer after layer, creating and reinforcing with thread while reminding us the beauty of line. Collector Chuzaburo Tanaka says of the anonymous creators of boro, even though they speak no words, we can hear them.
Hi, this is Jill. I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia, but tonight I'm going to take you on a little trip down to the Tennessee, North Carolina border at the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. About a year ago, I discovered the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, as well as many other national parks, have a artist residency program. And so I applied to it, never thinking in a million years I would actually get it, but I got this letter from them saying that I indeed had been selected to come and be their guest for a month. This is where I lived for the month of last October. It was a small apartment near the main visitors area, and was no TV, no Wi-Fi, very cozy in a rather monastic way, but it was really a lovely place to live, right within the park boundaries itself. Right downtown from the Smoky Mountains National Park is the Airmont School of Arts and Crafts. And the Surface Design Association was holding their annual conference and workshops there while I was there. So I was also able to take this class from Catherine Ellis, which I'm just throwing in here to say, if you ever get a chance to do. I am not a dyer, but learned a lot. Airmont also provided me, as the park's resident artist, with a studio for the whole month. These are the first two pieces that I made while in the studio, and they're made with some real leaves, photographs of lichens, and some real stones, things that were inspired through the park. As a park artist, you're also interacting with the public in various ways, both formal and informal. I did 2 sessions of on-site quilting, much like a plein air artist would. I was putting together bits and pieces to do pictures of 2 of the historic buildings there, and then I also worked with kids on leaf printing. But one day while working in my studio, I realized I can work in my studio at home, but I can't have this exploration and inspiration any other place or time in my life. So I could either stay in the studio or go enjoy the mountains. So I picked up my camera. Most of my work is camera-based or photography-based. And I headed out. And the light, the weather, the fall weather season made sure inspiration was everywhere, like in these big vistas. There was green everywhere. It was rainy, but beautiful the first week I was there. And I hiked through the forest for hours in the early morning in the mist and rain. And there was total silence, or else there's rushing water, the birds, everything. It was just heaven on earth. The greens were astonishing, and a lot of mosses there. There were moss on the bridges, moss on the trees, moss on the rocks. That bottom right corner is all rock that is just covered with this minuscule moss that were just gorgeous. But for me, the most important part that gets reflected in my work are the textures. Whether it was the textures of the lichens, the mosses, the water, the frost, the stones, the ripples in the river, each one was just vibrant with texture and really, really spoke to me in so many ways. So I took about 2,000 pictures, headed back to my studio at home, and started getting some of my pictures printed on fabric at Spoonflower, auditioning other fabrics and things to go with them in my studio and lining them up and getting it ready for a show and to start making. I tend to work, I come from a painting background, so I tend to work on my pictures, everything at the same time, and going from background forward and slowly bringing things up to finish, both through hand work and through machine quilting. And I'll machine quilt, then go back to hand and back and forth. So this is me in my studio. This is one of my first finished pieces. It's named the Forest Primeval. It's about 30 by 40 inches. And on the right are two close-ups of the details of how I cut back into fabrics, or on the bottom I've overlaid organza over parts of the photograph to get additional textures. This is named Crystal Drip, and it uses a lot of beading, hand stitching, and again, up on the right detail, you can see a lot of cutting back in through layers of fabric that I've put both behind and on top of the actual photographic fabric. This was Moss in the Mist, and this is probably my favorite because it just shows that incredible green lushness that was everywhere. In the top detail, you can see again hand stitching and how I cut back into fabrics. The bottom is also all hand stitching to bring out the moss texture. This one is called Stumped, and in Stumped I used some applique to extend and enhance the original photo. Part of the leaves on the plant in the foreground, some of them are from the actual photography, others were added with applique. There's also dryer lint under tulle to give additional texture. Fungus Among Us uses rocks as embellishments and dryer lint to add additional textures. So on the bottom right, you can see one of the rocks, the dryer lint under tulle, and a lot of hand stitching, along with, again, some of the cut and also couched yarns to bring back that texture. This is called Legs and Leaves. I think you can see the legs on the left and the leaves on the right. This one really is more abstract. It also uses a lot more piecing of other fabrics. There's burlap upholstery fabrics, felt, and various other fabrics under and along with the original photograph. This last example will give you Sunset. It's layered with organza and tulle to further control and enhance the lighting of the original photograph, which was just the sun glowing through these weeds at the evening. And again, some close-ups of the hand stitching on the bottom, a combination. Finally, all the pieces were mounted on canvas stretchers and were shown at the McGuffey Art Center in Charlottesville, Virginia for the month of February. And then they will be showing elsewhere down in the future, so I can keep you posted. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you ever get a chance to apply for membership, please do, or residency.
Thank you so much to all the awesome panelists. I am just inspired again, even though I'd heard them all in Philadelphia. And I want to comment, and Amy mentioned this in our chat also, that it was such a pleasure to see all those beautiful images right on my computer monitor immediately in front of me. The detail and the color and the luminosity was such a different experience than sitting in the conference room in Philadelphia. So I love seeing all of your photographs and all of your artwork and all of your stitching. So I think that since we are a little bit past an hour, And I'm assuming that, like me, you're full of ideas and inspiration, that we can probably forego a question and answer session for today. I think that's what we'll do. So I want to wrap up really by thanking again Maria Schell for bringing this format to our conference and for working with me to bring it to this webinar format. I also want to thank Mary Madamo, who is on the webinar subcommittee and helps me out with all the technical stuff. And of course, I want to thank our awesome panelists, Cindy, Diane, Amy, Geri, Carole, Jan, and Jill. And thanks to all the other SAQA members who logged in today. I hope that you are inspired to go create and think about what you might like to create and talk about in a lightning talk format. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you, Deborah.